What is the worst experience you ever had with your neighbors? Story 1. My neighbor loves the song Yeah by Usher. Like, she really, really loves it. I relive the early 2000s club hit almost daily. I'm sorry. It looks like my mother moved in next to you. My entire childhood was filled with Lil Jon yelling, Okay, yeah, what? Story 2. Lived on the top floor of a drug house in college because it was the only place that would let 7 of us rent together. The first week we were there, the SWAT team did a raid on one of the units. There were 3 below us. They busted in the door and used flashbang grenades on them. One of the other units smelled like urine and constantly had people coming in and out buying drugs. Our key barely fit the lock because people had tried to pick them so much. Our cable and internet stopped working, so we called the cable company to come check it. The guy took us over to the box outside and showed us 9 different illegal lines that were ripping our internet. I could go on and on. On the plus side, we could shoot bottle rockets in our hallway because it wasn't like anyone was going to call the cops on us. Story 3. He came home from the bar with his friend, both drunk. They were screwing around with a pistol and accidentally shot through the floor down into my apartment. I got hit in the stomach. Called 911, and when the ambulance was taking me away, my panicked fiancée was getting ready to leave because the EMTs told her to follow instead of riding with. My neighbors came down and was like, What happened? We heard a commotion. Cops were called. He got arrested. Yeah, I was going to post a story about my landlady complaining I leave the hall light on too much, but you definitely win this thread. Story 4. We were trying to sell our house and the neighbor's meth head nephew was sabotaging it. When we'd leave so people could come look at it, he would sneak around just being creepy, which turned off a lot of buyers. He even went into my house during an open house and was telling people not to buy it. These people lived like 100 yards away and we still don't know what his deal was. Once he started threatening my sister who tried to help him after he passed out on my driveway. She's a nurse. We called the cops and he signed a paper that said he was caught on the property again. He'd be sent to jail. Luckily, we were able to sell after that. I was in the process of selling my townhome, so I abandoned my house for a while and moved to another home. Dude took down the fence separating our townhomes and cut down my lemon tree. I was livid. Did you take it to court? That's destruction of property, which likely cut into your home value. Story 5. Once I had a neighbor in our college that would knock on my door and ask for money. I would just say that I'm a broke student and can't spare anything. It was weird as fuck, and a weekly occurrence at the least. She was in her 50s and working. One day I got fed up when she knocked on my door. I think I was stressed for exams, and I said, Yeah, I got some money for you. I asked her to hold out her hands and gave her maybe $2 worth of nickels that I had in the change jar. She never bothered me again. Story 6. She intentionally backed into my wife's car because she claimed my wife was parked in her spot. The spot was on a public street in front of her house. The cops saw it differently than she did. Story 7. Some 15 years ago, when my parents and I lived in Fort Wayne, Indiana, we ended up befriending one of the neighbors and her 2 kids. Well, one day, we were all hanging out together, and I noticed her son had some pretty bad bruises and a nice-sized knot on his head. I kind of shrugged it off, and we continued playing. Well, that night the mother comes over and confesses to my mom she killed that boy. She ended up drowning him in the bathtub after beating him severely. She wasn't remorseful at all. When she left back to her house, my mom called the cops immediately, and she was arrested shortly after. She vowed that when she got out, she would kill my mom. We noped the fuck out of Indiana and moved back to another state. Story 8. Lived above a guy in a really old fourplex, and I guess the wood floor squeaked really loudly when I walked around. It's not like I was stomping around either, but the dude would just constantly come upstairs and bang on my door and yell at me to stop moving around. I felt badly for him in the beginning because he seemed genuinely frustrated, but he didn't seem to understand or believe that I wasn't slamming my feet on the floor / his ceiling. I called my landlord several times asking him if we had a solution. I couldn't move because I was locked into my lease, but my landlord was just like, buy a lot of rugs. It got to the point where I couldn't take the constant yelling, and I was literally either tiptoeing around or hopping from my couch to my chair in order to get out of my living room so that he wouldn't be standing at my door yelling at me. Finally, I went downstairs one day and asked if we could talk about the situation because I felt like maybe if I looked him in the eye when he was calm and explained that I wasn't doing it on purpose and that there was literally nothing more I could do. I'd already bought area rugs for fuck's sake. He would maybe understand. So I went downstairs and very nicely explained, and he seemed to be listening. And then he said, I'm about at the point that if it happens again, I'm going to show up at your door with a really big knife. And then he just stared at me. I basically ran out of there, called my landlord and said I was more or less being threatened, and a month later the guy moved out. And then as soon as I could, I did too. Super shitty situation. I had a neighbor like this too in a condo I rented. It was a low-story wood-frame building, so I assumed the sound carried really well. She complained the day we moved in about people stomping around. I had surgery, so I was off work for a week and spent most of my time on the sofa. I got a written noise complaint for that week saying that there was banging and stomping around. I couldn't lift anything, so I'm not sure what the noise was. Before I moved out, we had a formal letter to meet with the condo board to resolve the issue. So glad I moved. I wonder how she's doing now with the noise. New family that moved in after me had 2 kids and the parents were on the heavier side. Story 9. When I was around 11 years old, my neighbor would occasionally watch me open my mailbox to see if my GameStop magazine had arrived. She would threaten me each time saying she was calling the cops and that it was illegal for me to check my parents' mail. I actually believed this until I was 15 years old. Story 10. My neighbors and my family were absolutely fine for about 7 years. It's a nice old man that was recently remarried. They have a 20-year-old student that parties from time to time, which is fine. But then one day, out of nowhere, we find our 1-year-old cat dead in their garden. Obviously, we cannot be mad. The cat probably died of a heart attack or something, so my family shrugs it off as a coincidence. Fast forward 2 months, we have a new cat. Younger, cuter. I come home one day and the cat comes crawling to me, giving me the loudest meow of his life. Turns out my cat was shot. With a bullet. Our gardener told us he clearly saw the neighbor with a gun shooting pigeons or something minutes before my cat was shot. So, yeah, as you can imagine, we haven't been close to our neighbor since that day. P.S. Our cat survived with surgery, perfectly fine, but he only has 8 lives left.
We sincerely appreciate you taking the time to watch our YouTube video. If you find our content helpful and enjoyable, please click the subscribe button to stay updated on any new videos we share in the future. Thank you once again, and we hope to see you in our next upcoming videos.